Hey, what's up? Back with another video, and today I'm going to be talking about a engine build that I'm probably going to be doing within the next few days or sometime throughout this week. But it's not the one that you might be thinking of, but it's a different one that's kind of the same, and I'm just going to shut the fuck up and just show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so under here I have a couple of engines or engine parts or whatever. This one looks complete, but it's not. It's completely hollow, and then this one's just missing stuff and whatever. But they are both Killer Bee engines. And yes, I'm building two Killer Bee engines, which is why not my last video, but the one before that, said Killer Bee 2 or whatever, because that's pretty much what it was about. So this one I'm going to be building in a couple days or sometime throughout this week. And that's what I'm going to be talking about in this video. This one over here is the one that's meant for the RX-8 renesis rotors, which are sitting right here. Now, those ones I have a lot of time and money into, and well, I do have all the stuff to put that engine together and build it, except there's some things that I need to work out, and well, that's gonna be shelved for a little bit, and I will make a separate video talking about why that is and whatever, but yeah. Enough of that. Over here I have a set of a Series 5 NA 9.7:1 compression rotors, and I'm going to be building these rotors throughout the video, and well, just talking about what I'm doing and just showing you how to assemble a rotor. So before we get started, I did want to also show you a comparison between Series 5 NA and RX-8 renesis rotors. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a front RX-8 rotor. It doesn't matter which one of these you grab, because there's not really front or rear rotor before the renesis. They're all pretty much symmetrical. But yeah, here's the difference between 9.7:1 compression and 10.0:1 compression. Let's see, look on the faces. If you look at the side sill slots, you'll notice that on the RX-8 rotors, the side sill slots are more closer to the edge, whereas the older rotors are more like to the center or whatever. Let's see, these rotors also, in the renesis anyway, not in older rotaries like this application is for, but there is 3 slots for oil control rings and stuff like that. The inner, the outer, and the oil scraper ring, whereas this one only takes 2. So the inner and the outer. Let's see, as far as the corner sill slots and the apex sill slots, in the RX-8 rotors, it's actually about half the size of these apex sill slots, but these have been milled out to accept this size, so older 2mm apex sills. Corner sill slots are exactly the same, no difference there. Except the RX-8 corner sills use a metal plug insert, whereas these ones use a little rubber plug just like this. So that's pretty much all the differences between those. And well, these have been side clearanced and balanced, so they weigh a little bit less. Oh yes, rotor weights. That's the other big thing here. So a stock RX-8 rotor weighs about 9.3 pounds, and a stock Series 5 rotor, which is what this one is, weighs 9.54 pounds. But with the side clearancing and the balancing corrections and stuff like that, also with the apex sill slot milling, each of these rotors weigh 9.2 pounds. So technically lightened and balanced, but it's all from the corrections and modifications done to them. So enough of that bullshit. Let's get to assembling these rotors. So first, what you want to do is get your Viton oil rings, or O-rings for the control rings, and then take a little bit of motor oil and just lubricate these. Just want to make sure you get good coverage. And then these ones go on the outside of the inner control rings. You do also want to be careful, because you can cut the shit out of yourself if you're not careful. And these don't really like to go on. There we go. I'm gonna get one for the outer. This can get really messy really fast. And then these ones go on the inside. Really struggling with this one. Well, maybe I got it, maybe I don't. Who knows? Oof. Ah, so close. Okay, I'm gonna stop the video right here just so I can get this in, because this is kind of boring just to watch this. Okay, well, that was fun. Anyway, next thing, let's see, this one is the front rotors. So I'm gonna start with the front control rings, or the springs anyway. The oil control rings themselves, they're symmetrical. They don't really matter which ones you put. What does matter though is the control ring springs. So if you look at these, one has a blue dot, one has a white dot. The white dot is for the front faces. So on the front rotor, this is the front face. On the rear rotor, this is the front face. So you want white on this one and white on this one. And then blue for the other side or whatever. And let's see, if you look at these little bits right here, you notice that there is a rounded tip right here and a square tip right here. Rounded tip goes into a little groove that is, can you see that right there? And it's on both of them in multiple spots. There should be two of them in each groove, one on opposite sides of each other. So I'm going to go ahead and install that. See, this is a inner, and you want to line that little round tip up with that little indentation. And let's see, the reason for that is according to the FSM, the rounded part goes in there and it catches and locks it in place. So when the rotor's spinning this way, this square tip is facing up. It's keeping the control ring going forward and staying in place. If you put the blue one on the front face, then it's going to just go round and around, and it's going to cause a lot of issues. May cause excessive wear to your oil control ring, so you do not want to do that. Let's see. Next, I'm going to go ahead and put this over here. Is that the right spot? Yeah. Put it right there. Make sure it's in the groove. And then on the control ring itself, they're sticking to each other because of the oil. You'll notice that there is a little square indentation. You want to line, oh yeah, it's corresponding on two spots, so opposite sides of each other. So it doesn't matter which one you put on the square tip, as long as one of them goes there. If it goes down enough, it'll just catch on it. Or you could just eyeball it and then just press it right on. I'm gonna take a rag, just be extra careful. Okay, that should be seated. You'll feel it seat. The rubber O-ring insert thing, you'll feel it kind of pop into place. You won't hear a pop, but you'll kind of feel it. And you'll know when it's seated, so that should be good to go now. Then do the exact same thing for the outer ring. Go ahead and line that up. So you should be able to pop in place too. But it's not wanting to do that. Do I have something flat? A piece of wood. Maybe. Okay, had to check the FSM, but yeah, I misread it as 16 thousandths, but it's like what, 16 hundredths. So the oil seal protrusion, you should be seeing a picture of what I was looking at just now. Oil seal protrusion should be less than 4 millimeters, which to me it looks like about 4 millimeters or less. So this side's done. and I'm gonna stop messing with it now. But I'm just gonna time lapse the rest of them and just assemble it from there. And yeah, go for it. Okay, finally got it. So, had to do a little bit of Googling, but problem I was having was this outer ring was it just kept popping out over and over again. Got one side down, then the other side would pop out and things like that. But yeah, I guess I just didn't have enough oil on it. So I put more oil on it, as RX-7 Club said, and I was able to get it actually in and to stay in and stuff. So I'm gonna assemble that and you know, move forward from there. I'm not gonna record any more of that because well, should be pretty simple and straightforward. But yeah, you want to get these down and equally flat and not protruding more than 4 millimeters. Or is it 4 millimeters or what is it? I think it's 4 millimeters. Okay, well, yeah, that's good. Okay, so both rotors now done for oil control rings, and that was a much bigger pain in the dick than I was anticipating. Yeah, if you have a difficult outer control ring, then you just want to put more lube on it and then work your way around it. If you have old control rings laying around, use that as a kind of a press tool. That's what the FSM says anyway. And yeah, eventually keep working at it and you will get it all the way in there. And that's how you want it to look. Okay, so next thing I'm going to move on to is installing corner sills, corner sill springs, side sills, and side sill springs. So all these things are used except for the corner sill springs. And I'm also using used solid corner sills and used side sills, all except for one of them, which is a brand new one that I had to order. And let's see, if you look right here, I have the bags numbered. It corresponds to the numbers I marked on the rotors. So this one goes to slot number 12. Now for the side sill springs, when you install them, you want to make sure that these tips are facing upwards or towards you, outwards of the rotor. You want to center it up with the slot because they're not the exact length of the slot. They're a little bit shorter. You don't want to have it more on one side than the other because, well, stuff and things and such. It probably doesn't even matter, to be honest, but it's just one of those things. You want to get it right. If there is a way to get it wrong. So I'm going to go ahead and actually, I'm going to do the corner sills first. Should have 12 of these. So there's two types of, well, I don't know about before 1974, but 74 forward, there are two types of corner sill springs. And these are the ones you want to use. So this is the older style before 1986. Was it 86 or was it the Series 5 forward? I don't remember. Anyway, oh no, these came out of a FC engine. So Series 4 at least, maybe Series 5 is when they started using these. But these wire style corner sill springs, they suck. I mean, they work, but they really suck, so they are trash. These are the kind you want to use. They're just a much better spring, and they use these, I think, from the Series 5 forward all the way through the RX-8 years, and it's a really good spring. So buy that one instead of those stupid wire things. Let's go ahead and drop them in. Not really a wrong way to do it. You just want to make sure that they are centered and squared or whatever. Not really a way to square something in a round hole, but whatever. There you go. And take our corner seals out. And you want to have the hollow side facing out, the flat side facing inward. I do believe Atkins offers a fully flat one that's flat on both sides. I might consider that for the renesis rotor build thing, but using these ones for this one because why the hell not? And they were used and they were cheap. Going to take a used apex sill, center it with a slot. Oh, you also want to make sure that your corner sills move freely in the slot. So you can do that just by pressing up and down on it. As long as it moves freely, then it should be fine. But if it feels like it's catching or like it actually gets stuck, which is one of the issues I have with one of my renesis rotors, something I'll go over in another video. Let's see, one thing you can do, it's recommended to use these types of aftermarket solid corner sills, but you take a flathead and then you put on like a drill bit or something like that, or yeah, it's a drill bit, you put it on a drill, and then you just spin it in place. You put some like rubbing compound or something like that, and then it basically hones out the corner sill slot, and then you just keep doing that and then test it over and over again. And as long as the corner sill moves freely in and out, then it's good to go. See, I think it was one of these slots that I had issues with, but then I did that trick and it worked, but I did it with a flathead screwdriver, not a drill. And all these side sills are used. I think I mentioned that already, but they're all used except for one I had to replace because every single used side sill that I had was like, I think the closest clearance or the tightest clearance was 7 thousandths, and the highest one was like 11 thousandths, which is way too much. But when you're reusing a side sill or something like that, oh, and to calm down any arguments regarding used side sills, here's a brand new side sill, here's a used one. They're the exact same width, so yeah. Side sills don't really get worn down that much, so not really much to worry about there. So I'm reusing these. But when you do reuse them, you want to make sure that the spring side is facing down into the rotor, because, well, it'd be kind of stupid to do it the other way, because this side's a little bit worn from the spring. So I'm going to go ahead, pop that there in the slot. And it's clearance properly, so I don't have to worry about anything, but just go ahead and give it a couple pushes just to make sure it actually moves freely in the slot. As long as they're clearanced correctly, then they should be good to go. And it was number 10 that I had to get a new side sill, and this one isn't worn on either side, so I can put it in either way, because it's not like your renesis tapered side sill where it only goes in one way. You do it flipped, whatever, doesn't matter, because there's no spring wear on this one. So go ahead and pop that in there. I'm good to go. Next, I'm going to take a little bit of, I'm going to get a glove for that. Grease gets messy. Take a little bit of grease, put it on the corner sill, on the side sill, just to hold it in place. I'm not going to use, a shitload or anything like that, like some people do, but just enough to basically glue it in place. That way they don't fall out. Because it would be very bad if the sills fell out while you're assembling the engine, because then you assemble the whole engine without noticing it, and maybe a corner sill fell out, maybe a side sill fell out, maybe something, I don't know. And then next thing you know, you start it up, it sounds like shit, and oh hey, that came right out, didn't it? But yeah, you start it up, and then your engine runs like shit, can't figure out why. You pull it apart and find out there is a corner sill lodged in the one of the faces of your rotor, and that would be very bad because I don't want to buy another S5 rotor because that costs too much money, and these didn't cost me too much money to buy initially. So I'm just gonna goober it for reassurance. Okay, this side's all goobered. Let's, okay. I didn't think this one through. I'm just gonna assemble it like this. Gonna line it up. Pop the corner sill in. I just don't want to put it on its face on this side, just because of, well, it could stick to the towel that's right here, and that will kind of defeat the whole point of me assembling the rotor this way. So I'm doing this instead. So I realize I haven't mentioned the reason that I'm doing this engine build instead of doing the RX-8 rotor build. But like I said, I am still doing that build, but it is getting shelved because of issues that will be described as or in a future video or whatever. But this one is just kind of a, I had the opportunity to do it, so I'm doing it. And pretty much it's exactly the same, overall the same as the Renesis Killer Bee build, just with factory balanced S5 NA rotors. Let's see, auto counterweights, and the same lightweight file I was going to use anyway, and very, very large exhaust ports by comparison. After I get done assembling these rotors, then I'll go over showing you all the engine stuff, or the iron and housing stuff. But same ports, same, pretty much same the whole way through, except for the exhaust ports. Same carb, everything. I'm gonna wipe this up and then put the side sills in. Alright, so we got 876. That's a 9. Notice how I'm not checking to see if that spring is centered, because I don't give a fuck. I do, but the entire point of this engine build is it's just a half-ass throw together engine. The fact that I'm using used Apex Sills, I know it gets a lot of negative feedback and stuff like that because it's not a proper rebuild or anything like that. But I don't plan for this engine to see any more than 20 to 30,000 miles before I tear it apart and rebuild it, properly at that point, and more than likely not with the same housings, because I wouldn't choose to port the housings the way they're ported, just because there's no way for me to put exhaust sleeves in them anymore. It has to run without exhaust sleeves, which some people have issues with that. Well, they don't actually have issues with that, they just have issues with the idea of it. But really there's no actual drawback on an NA application that makes less than 200 raw horsepower. So it's just one of those things that people want to complain about and say that your engine's gonna blow up and you're a shipbuilder and whatever negative things people say on the internet. But it's fine. When I did pull the engine apart that one of the housings came out of, I had to port match one of the housings because the other one dropped the apex sill, and it caused some serious havoc because there's a 3 millimeter apex sill. Oh yeah. Let's see, do I have a 2 mil? sure I do. There you go. Oh well. I use this one for comparison. Here's a 3-piece, or not 3-piece. This is a 3-piece apex sill, or part of it. This is a 3mm versus 2mm. Notice the thickness difference and stuff like that. Anyway, one of these broke and just destroyed the housing and rotor in that engine. And it was, well, it didn't look like a fun day for somebody. Okay, and I believe I'm supposed to put an apex sill in there to keep those corner sills lined up. There's an apex sill. Actually, I'm not going to do that because I do need to measure these corner pieces with the against the sill. Make sure they're the same height. Because putting a taller corner piece with a shorter apex sill when they're used, of course when you buy a new one you don't have to worry about this, but taller corner piece with a shorter long beam, that can cause some excessive corner wear thing on the housing, and I don't want that, so I got to take dial covers to that. So this rotor is done, and I'm going to go ahead and you know, time lapse the other rotor, and you know, after that we'll go on to, you know, the motor build itself and what my plans are for that. Okay, so as 5 rotors are done out of the way, so let's go ahead and move on to the motor and differences there and stuff. So just for comparison, I have a stock Repu housing, just to compare the exhaust port size. Killer Bee housing, one of the housings that came out of my original Killer Bee engine. And then this one that's going to be used for this build. So let's see, let's go ahead and just compare Killer Bee to Stockport. So this is pretty much all 74 through 78 you know, 13B housings, and well, it's fairly bigger than well, than a Stockport. The only thing different I did with this is I just smoothed it out a bit just to clean it up, and yeah. The Killer Bee housings. Put those together. And that's significantly larger, more brought up, and let's see, is it a bit more down? Yeah, it's a little bit more down too. Let's see, I'm not 100% sure what effect this is going to have on horsepower and torque numbers, but from what I was told, the extra overlap should give me more torque, which is pretty much what happens when you bridge port or you port down on your intake port. But I was also told that I should see higher horsepower in the upper rev range, but it may also bring my peak torque and peak horsepower up a little bit more. But looking at my original Killer Bee dyno sheet, I didn't actually peak horsepower anywhere. My fuel pump wouldn't let me go past 7,000 RPM without a really bad breakup. So not really sure what peak horsepower was, but peak torque was about 136 foot-pounds at a 4,500 RPM, or right around there. So you know, peak torque might be brought up, might get raised a little bit from the extra overlap, and we'll see what peak horsepower is, you know, when I dyno this engine. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is the intake ports. Now the intake ports are pretty much unchanged from the original Killer Bee, which was, you know, my biggest point with this engine build is I didn't want the ports to really change that much, aside from smoothing them out. Now because this iron's being taken from this engine, see the center primaries are smoothed out, but on these outer irons I left you know, the stock cast roughness stuff throughout the runner. So you know, that's the only real difference from this engine to this one, is the roughness in the secondary ports. My porting template I had made by Built to Apex, or Nader Sharif, and it is based off of my old front iron, but you know, they're all the exact same shape anyway. So yeah, literally the only difference with this engine build from the original Killer Bee is the S5 rotating assembly with auto counterweights and the very, very much larger exhaust ports. So at this point, I'm sure you're probably wondering why I'm doing this engine build seemingly out of nowhere. And that's for a couple different reasons. And one of those reasons being opportunity. Well, the opportunity presented itself and I jumped on it. And it pretty much all started with that FC6 port I pulled apart a few videos back and found out the front iron water channel was cracked. See, my plan from there was to use these extra RX5 housings that I have, the S4NA E-shaft and rotors, and then my 12A, pull it apart and use the irons, port them out and whatever, and basically do this exact build, but with the S4NA rotors. Well, my friend Jack, he needs an engine for his car because that 12A we pulled apart in another one of my videos, well, it wasn't rebuildable. So yeah, he needed an engine, so he came forward and offered me to trade these S5 rotors and a front R5 plate towards my running 12A. So we're pulling that 12A out, it's going in his car. His car will get on the road because literally all his car needs is a good engine, which my 12A is. Let's see, and the Racing Bee Holly intake manifold that I have on my 12A and the CX Racing exhaust header is going to another friend of mine who has a good engine and needs a bunch of other things for his SA, but those are going to his car. And pretty much I just get a badass engine, and two of my friends either get a running car or, you know, clutch to having a running car on the road. And I think it's pretty cool how stuff like that just works out. But anyway, as far as going forward with the renesis rotor engine, this next tax season coming up, I'll repurchase all the stuff that I took from that build and then, you know, buy all the stuff again. And you know, when that engine actually comes together and I build it and stuff like that, then it'll go in the car and well, I'll figure out what to do with this engine. But overall, I don't plan to put more than 20 to 30,000 miles on it because it is a half-ass build. That's, you know, it's literally just a throw together engine. It's not meant to last forever. It's basically equivalent to a Mazda Reman. If you were to buy a brand new Mazda Reman, this is how they build their engines. They just use whatever parts are within spec, and as long as it falls within spec, even if it's just barely within spec, then it gets used. That's how a Mazda Reman goes together, except they don't do large street ports on them. So it's kind of like a Reman. Anyway, if you like this video, if you found any of it helpful at all to you, then I'd really appreciate if you left a like, subscribe if you want, and you know, share too. If there's anything that you have questions about or anything I didn't cover in a way that you might or might not understand or whatever, then feel free to reach out to me, and I'm more than willing to, you know, answer whatever questions you have or help you out however I can. But other than that, you guys have a good night, and I'm going to go to sleep because it's like 4 in the morning now. All right, see ya.